So Errol Spence makes a successful first defense of his IBF 147-pound welterweight world championship against veteran Lamont Peterson. Lamont opting not to come out for the beginning of the 8th round after advice from his trainer Barry Hunter. A predictable outcome, but nevertheless it was a very good display from Errol, who exemplified a far greater dynamic boxing display, utilizing lateral movement, angles, and simultaneously working the head and the body to effectively break Lamont Peterson down and forcing him to quit on his stall. Lamont Peterson was utilizing a wide stance, certainly from the first round, which does have advantages from the offensive side. Your feet are planted, so hence it allows you to fire lead power punches without telegraphing your punches too much. And on the defensive side, if you've got a wide stance, it does allow you to try and evade punches, try and slip and sort of slide. But when you're trying to walk your opponent down through the front door, not try and use any subtlety, trying to vary your game plan, trying to get onto your toes, trying to employ your own angles, it was a futile task. Errol sensed what Lamont was trying to do, and he was just peppering him with long jabs, long left hands, and more than that, he was using a greater volume of activity to keep Lamont at bay, keep him at distance. So great to see that Errol was utilizing his height and his reach advantage. Now Errol is not a concussive one-punch knockout merchant. He's very much a systematic, mechanical machine. Maybe he should be adopting Lucas Matisse's pseudonym, because Errol definitely is the machine. Laser focused, disciplined, can be patient as well. He's not he's not reckless at times. Even when Lamont was able to cut the distances, was trying to engage with Errol on the inside, yeah, Errol would oblige, would trade punches, but then he would try and spin off, try and get back onto his jab. I think Derek James did a very good job in stressing to Errol to try and keep his hands up on the inside. He was dropping his right hand. Lamont was able to fire. Well, he was twisting his body to fire a looping left hand over. You know, it was a little bit telegraphed. He was just trying to load up on his punches far too much. You know, he obviously had too much confidence in his punching power and his punch resistance. When you're trying to catch and shoot against Errol, you know, you're catching your punches on top of your head. His body is sort of arced over, his chin is tucked in behind his gloves, and his elbows is protecting his torso, so his defensive posture is quite good. Hence the reason when Errol was targeting the body, a lot of the punches were borderline. Referee did warn Errol, did call a break to the action to warn him about potential low blows, but they were borderline. There was no malicious intent. Lamont was able to pretty much cover up a lot of his body. So when you're angling your body, the target is not only visibly, it's more difficult to see, but it's a much smaller target as well. So Errol didn't have a lot of distance, didn't have a lot of area to play around with, but the way he alternated his head and his body's attacks was impressive. It wasn't predictable. It wasn't telegraphed. It was well calibrated and very well executed. His accuracy was good. His concentration, his focus, you could almost see him very wide-eyed. His eyes are on the target at all times. A great lesson to all these young fighters about, not admiring your work, remaining sharp focused, not getting overconfident. Although he is naturally a supremely confident fighter. So in conclusion, a very good victory. That's what the 10th body that Errol has racked up. The last two in Kell Brook and now Lamont Peterson, showing improvements in his performance each time, more and more. I think his defense on the inside, there are rooms for improvement there. Derek James at times did seem agitated that he was dropping his hand on the inside. Lamont was able to catch him with a short and right hook on the inside, and even at times was able to catch him with that corked looping left hand, which to me certainly looked telegraphed. But I guess Errol is, he's confident in his punch resistance, and he's thinking, well, if my opponent is opening up, maybe it gives me some opportunities to counter him. If we trade, I'm perhaps the heavier-handed fighter, I can certainly do more damage. So I guess he almost thrives off that challenge on trying to trade and engage with your opponent on the inside, and it makes for exciting action. And in spurts there were some great exchanges. Ultimately, Lamont did not have the punching power to push Errol Spence back, to disrupt his rhythm, his activity, his high volume, to try and slow him down. Did land some good body shots, but the punches were just far too infrequent. Lamont's activity was disappointing, but Lamont may have felt that if I try and open up too much, I'm going to get countered, I'm going to get peppered. Errol was able to repel a lot of his punches. So when you're micro-analyzing a fight, it's difficult to be overcritical when you're up against a very good offensive fighter, a very disciplined fighter, a very strong, a natural welterweight who has the physical strength on the inside as well. So it's a difficult proposition for any fighter. Lamont at times in the past has tried to get up onto his toes, try and circle the target, as he did against Danny Garcia for the opening half of the fight. Regrettably, it wasn't rewarded by the judges, but I felt his work was better. Then on the second half of the fight, tried to walk Danny down, landing power shots, and he was rocking Danny. And it was a travesty that Lamont was not the recipient of a favorable decision, as he clearly deserved in that fight. So in this fight, he thought, well, maybe I'm not going to get the same reward. I'm facing the champion. I've got to try and earn his respect and try and break him down. Try and fight fire with fire on the inside. Brave, courageous tactics, but in hindsight, it wasn't the wisest of tactics. He would have been better off getting up on his toes, trying to outbox Errol from the outside. Try and pepper him with power shots. So unfortunately for Lamont, he doesn't win the IBF championship. And who knows, what's next for Lamont. He's 33 years old now. He's fought at 147 pounds. Been in there with some great opponents. Made a reasonable amount of money. He talked about in the post-fight that he's contemplating retirement, but he has not made a decision yet. Personally, I still think he can fight on. I think he's still extremely competitive against the likes of, Adrian Broner. I think he can. He's very competitive even against, a Jeff Horn, Manny Pacquiao, Amir Khan. So there's still possibilities of, of Lamont continuing. As for Errol, he's expressed, his desire numerous times. The boxing fraternity will know he's looking to unify the belts with Keith Thurman, who holds the WBA and the WBC. But Keith Thurman it's is tied up against Jesse Vargas. You know, I wouldn't be sleeping on Keith Thurman. I think he's certainly a far more harder, a far more dynamic puncher than Lamont Peterson, an explosive fighter. Does have good footwork as well. Can hit and run, and I guess that is the better tactic against Errol Spence. Trying to come in through the front door and fight with him on the inside, I don't think is a wise strategy. You've got to almost employ a wasp-like tactics, like a young Manny Pacquiao, in and out, swarming with punches, keep rotating him, forcing him to reset. Errol can be a little bit too mechanical, may not be as quick on his feet on the outside. Keep trying to spin him. So Keith definitely has the tools, and I think he's got the game plan and the ring IQ. But it all comes down to his proclivity. Does he want the fight? Does he want it immediately? Does he want it in a year and a half's time? The public are getting a little bit frustrating, accusing him of ducking and diving. But I think the fight will happen. I think when Keith gets past Jesse Vargas, if he fights in an extremely positive manner and gets a decisive victory, that may spur on to take on the fight at the end of the year. Otherwise, Terence Crawford against Jeff Holm for the WBO, that path is going to be a little bit more difficult, given that the title will probably be in the hands of Top Rank. Errol Spence against Terence Crawford, a mouth-watering proposition, but Terence Crawford is not going to take that fight in 2018. He's trying to acclimate to 147 pounds. But in 2018, if both of them are still incumbent champions, and if Errol Spence and Keith Thurman do not engage, then Terence Crawford against Errol Spence, a potential super fight at 147 pounds. So, corruption in boxing, I'm out.